Welcome to the Thing About Salem. I'm Josh Hutchinson. Today we're examining how the Salem Witch Trials of 1692 and 1693 have been reimagined, reinterpreted, and sometimes completely reinvented by Hollywood.
Hi, I'm Sarah Jack. From serious historical dramas to Disney comedies to teen supernatural series, Salem has become shorthand for witchcraft in American popular culture. But how accurate are these portrayals? And what do they reveal about our ongoing fascination with this dark chapter in American history?
We can't cover all of the hundreds and hundreds of pop culture depictions of Salem in just 15 minutes. So we'll focus on a selection of films and TV shows that are emblematic of the treatment Salem has received over the decades.
Rather than criticize these works for their historical accuracy, we'll explore what they tell us about how each generation has understood and reimagined the witch trials.
When did Salem pop culture start, and where do we begin our discussion of it?
With the Crucible. Oh, wait. Was there something before the Crucible you just watched?
I just watched Maid of Salem from 1937. Maid of Salem, it's interesting. It features Fred McMurray and Claudette Colbert. And a lot of us remember Fred from things like My Three Sons and that one about the dog and that other one, Flubber, that he was in. It's interesting. He's a young leading man in this one, and Claudette Colbert falls for him, but then she gets caught up in this witch trial, and it's entirely fictitious, the whole story, but they do bring in some elements of truth by actually quoting from the records and from Cotton Mather's writings about witch trials.
So it was one of Hollywood's early serious treatments of the Salem witch trials?
Yes, probably the first.
And then, as we mentioned, the Crucible, which is historical fiction, was really a statement about the political climate in the United States in the 1950s, as much as it was about a witch hunt.
It's timeless lessons in not jumping to conclusions and pointing fingers at people without solid evidence. Those kinds of lessons, they still are good for today, and we can still get a lot of value out of the Crucible. Unfortunately, there's a few misconceptions in there. And unfortunately, a lot of schools use the Crucible as a substitute for the real history lessons.
Yes, and as we know, there are some real characters. And when I say real characters, I mean actual people from the Salem Witch Trials that are characters in Arthur Miller's play. So it'd be really great if teachers take some time to learn about those stories and share those with their students too.
So the Crucible, the play The Crucible premiered in 1953. It's been adapted for film several times. There was a 1957 film adaptation directed by Raymond Rouleau, a 1996 version that I've seen several times, and maybe you have too, featuring Daniel Day-Lewis and Winona Ryder. There's a 2014 movie production from the Old Vic Theatre in England starring Richard Armitage. And The Crucible set the template for serious dramatic treatments of Salem. And the play The Crucible has been performed thousands and thousands of times by different community theaters, national theaters, school theater groups. It's been performed, and I can guarantee that any week of the year, there's The Crucible being performed somewhere in America and probably somewhere in England too.
Jumping all the way to 2003, there was a production called Salem Witch Trials. It was an American-Canadian miniseries starring Kirstie Alley and Alan Bates. And the aim of this production was for historical authenticity while adding dramatic elements. And it was dramatic. It is dramatic.
It is dramatic, but the story that it's based off of, the Salem Witch Trials, highly dramatic event, I'd have to say.
But Hollywood's relationship with Salem took a much more playful turn.
Enter Disney magic, and one that's about Salem, or at least that in Salem and features the Salem Witch Trials, is Hocus Pocus, the hilarious Disney romp featuring Bette Midler, Kathy Najimy, and Sarah Jessica Parker, who is a real Salem Witch Trial descendant of Esther Elwell of Gloucester. That movie is so hilarious. I watch it every single year. Can't get enough of it.
Disney released this Salem-inspired film, but it initially bombed, possibly losing $16 million. But it has become beloved. In fact, when we started our podcast, we kicked it off with a historical commentary recording between Josh and I on Hocus Pocus. We were excited about Hocus Pocus 2 having been released, and so that's how we celebrated Halloween in 2023 with our podcast.
It was such a wonderful time with Hocus Pocus 2 coming out. I absolutely love so many fun things in these movies, but it basically follows this villainous comedic trio of witches who are inadvertently resurrected by a teenage boy in Salem on Halloween night when he lights the black flame candle.
And this narrative really transformed Salem from the tragic historical reputation into a magical tourist destination.
Made the witches comedic rather than terrifying and so much fun. And it changed Salem, Massachusetts itself. This 1993 Disney film brought eyes to the Massachusetts town. I want to talk about the Hocus Pocus effect. It really established Salem as a Halloween destination rather than a historical tourist site and created the template for fun witch movies set in Salem.
And Hocus Pocus 2, which was out in 2022, continued this franchise with teenage girls bringing back the Sanderson sisters. This franchise has inspired countless imitators and homages. And I was on Facebook today. I see some Hocus Pocus fun ticketed events happening on the calendar in Salem right now. And it's alive and well in 2025. There are multiple dedicated Hocus Pocus walking tours and bus tours. And essentially, the Hocus Pocus film has made Salem a character itself. And that's because they showed specific streets, houses, locations, and a community of people.
Houses and locations that you can visit in real life, and many people do, probably millions of people. Well, I could say definitely, almost definitely. So anyways, these houses and locations you can visit in real life. Many of them are in Salem. Some are in other towns in the area. But I know people love to go to the Ropes Mansion, which was Allison's house in the movie, the first movie. And it gets decked out every September for haunted happenings in Salem.
Do you think that the cemetery scenes of Hocus Pocus bring interest of tourists to Charter Street Cemetery?
I hope they do, but I hope that the tourists behave better than those kids in the movie. They drive me crazy at that cemetery.
You have an ancestor there.
Yeah, and they're sitting on the tombstones and such things, which, no.
Yeah,
Please.
there's much to do. You don't have to sit on a tombstone while you're there. So, did Hocus Pocus open the door for more creative interpretations of Salem?
I would say, I was just watching another movie, Halloween movie set in Salem that's more recent, Netflix's Hubie Halloween, and it just went with a complete comedic bent. It's hilarious.
Oh.
Now let's talk about television. TV has provided a rich medium for exploring Salem's witch trial legacy, allowing for deeper character development and more complex historical exploration than a short movie can. I don't know if you're like me, but I grew up watching Bewitched and laughing at the antics of Samantha's family, but they did take on some serious issues, and one of them was the Salem Witch Trials. Season 7, they went and they filmed 8 episodes in 1970 because a fire had shut down the Hollywood set.
When you're watching those episodes, you get to see them tour the House of the Seven Gables and criticize the logo. I love that part when they roll into town and her mother and her are just like, well, this isn't going to do. And you are expecting, well, maybe because in modern times, there could be criticism to the logo if you're wanting to feel more of the history aesthetic versus the pop culture aesthetic, but you expect when they changed the logo maybe to take the witchiness away, but they just made her cuter.
Yeah, they didn't like the old hag representation of the witch, so they decided to update it with the more Samantha like figure to depict what a witch would be. And so in one of the episodes, they actually go back in time to 1692 Salem and have a witch trial. You think that maybe Samantha's going to get tried? But they pull the old switcheroo, and it's Darren Stevens on trial for witchcraft for lighting a match in 1692.
And he also lent a ballpoint pen to Samantha, who was a barmaid at the moment, not realizing who she was. And she offered it to the community, and they were like, this is a piece of magic. This is from the devil. So that was fun. In the actual Salem Witch Trials, we know that they were doing experiments with magic, basically to test whether someone was a witch. That's part of the record. But in this episode, she's like, I'm going to prove I'm a witch. And her shackles come off, and at one point they disappear. So she I don't know. I just found that ironic.
Yeah, that she proves that Darren's not a witch, but that she is a witch. So it's a very different take on a witch trial.
Yeah, and I'm trying to remember if she wrinkles her nose and does a in the courtroom. I hope she did, because that's pretty funny if she did, but I don't remember now hearing that
I'm
part.
sure she did.
Okay.
The plaintiff in the case takes the match from Darren that Darren has used, and they challenge him to light a fire with it to show that anybody can do it. It's not witchcraft. And then that's when she goes wiggle, wiggle on her nose and throws the spell out there and shoots up a flame from a dead match.
It's really great to recollect those pieces of the Bewitched stories, because when you see her in Salem right now as this beautiful statue, her character would be thrilled to see that there. It's the right representation of a witch, according to Samantha.
People love to stop and pose for pictures with it. It's right downtown, very popular destination, but it was controversial when it was put in place in 2005.
It was interestingly financed by TV Land cable network. That statue is 6 feet tall, and it's located at the corner of Washington and Essex Streets.
So next time you go to Salem, be sure to keep your eye out for that, but you really can't miss it.
Now just take a stab at how much you think they spent with that installation.
What, 10,000?
$75,000. So when you see the heartache of locals when she is vandalized, you can remember there's actually a lot of money that went into that, but it's really more because she's just such a cherished character.
And Bewitched isn't the only show that decided to have a witch trial in Old Salem. In Sabrina, the Teenage Witch, the Sabrina character actually goes on a field trip with her class and they have a mock witch trial. The teacher hands out cards in envelopes to all the students and says that some of you are going to get a card that says witch, and the others of you are to determine who is the witch among you and try them and see if you've got the right person. So they try Sabrina's friend Jenny and put her through this real trial. One of the other girls gets real mean and just starts acting like she's an afflicted person and blaming everything that she's seeing, all these terrible specters tormenting her that she's seeing, she's blaming on Jenny. And then Sabrina steps in to try to help her friend, and she gets caught up in it. And in the end, I don't know if they learn a lesson or not. But Sabrina the Teenage Witch, the 90s show, it's a fun show. It's a lighthearted treatment of a actual witch. But in the show, they make clear that though the main characters are actual witches, they themselves say that the people tried in 1692 were actually innocent of it. And this happens in both Sabrina the Teenage Witch and in Bewitched. They both go out of their way to make these statements, which I find very refreshing.
So we definitely need to mention the chilling adventures of Sabrina, but we are working on episode completely dedicated to that story. So we'll just touch on her.
Yeah, the chilling adventures of Sabrina is based off of a comic, just like the original Sabrina the Teenage Witch was based off of a comic in the Archie series. And so Chilling Adventures of Sabrina the show follows the same character who's also in the show Riverdale. They're both on Netflix, and they present a darker, more chilling version of witchcraft and the powerful evil forces that Sabrina has to contend with.
Like the previous Sabrina, it is a coming of age. And the reason we can enjoy making an episode about it is because there is an endless amount of tropes just in that first season that we can tie back to how we look at the witch and define the witch as a culture across history. And so the chilling adventures, it is dark, but so is the actual history of Salem and the previous witch trials. And if you really think about some of those episode themes, they're not much darker than the reality.
That's so very true.
Salem's influence on pop culture extends far beyond direct adaptations, and there's lots of subtle references and creative homages across various media.
I feel like I'm doing a plug for Netflix now, but they also produced the Fear Street trilogy in 2021. And this horror trilogy regularly references the trials of Salem. For example, Sheriff Good is an homage to one of the first victims of the Salem witch trials, Sarah Good. And this shows how Salem has become part of the broader vocabulary of American horror. For a more serious portrayal, which actually brings you the emotions that were really experienced by the people involved in the actual Salem witch trials, look no further than the PBS miniseries, Three Sovereigns for Sarah. It follows the story of Sarah Cloyce, the sister of Rebecca Nurse and Mary Esty. And Rebecca and Mary were executed for witchcraft in Salem. Sarah Cloyce survived, and this movie is about the struggle to get some recognition that a wrong was done to her and to get some restitution for her suffering because she was in horrible jail conditions for months and months awaiting trial and witnessing her two sisters leave the jail one last time. And this film, which stars Vanessa Redgrave as Sarah Cloyce, was actually filmed largely in Danvers and Salem, and the meeting house that's used is a replica of the original meeting house of Salem Village that was built in 1672 on Joseph Hutchinson's land. And they built this replica meeting house for this movie. They put it on the Rebecca Nurse homestead, and you can actually go to it today. It's very historically true and accurate. They use the exact dimensions that are referenced in the Salem Village church record book. And so that you can get a real perspective of what it might have been like to be in the meeting house during those examinations of the suspects while the afflicted girls were wailing and convulsing and accusing people of being specters and all of that stuff they were doing.
Thank you for enjoying this conversation with us on Salem's enduring power. From the Crucible's political allegory to Hocus Pocus's Halloween magic, from supernatural drama to countless hidden references, Salem continues to captivate popular culture more than 3 centuries after the trials ended.
What makes Salem so enduringly powerful is how it represents universal themes: the danger of mass panic, the persecution of the different, the abuse of authority, and the tragic consequences of community fear. These themes remain relevant regardless of the era. They're based on human nature, all-time hits.
Pop culture treatments of Salem undeniably remind us that historical events don't just belong in the past. They live on in how each generation interprets and reimagines the history. These stories do continue to process the trauma and lessons of 1692.
Perhaps most importantly, Salem in pop culture serves as an ongoing conversation between past and present. Even when the portrayals are historically inaccurate or purely fictional, they keep the conversation alive about persecution, justice, and the importance of protecting those who are different.
The challenge for future creators will be finding ways to continue to honor both the historical reality and the cultural legacy that has grown up around it.
Yeah, thanks for joining us on this journey through Salem's pop culture evolution. Whether you prefer your Salem stories serious or supernatural, historical or comedic, the important thing is remembering the real people at the heart of these tales.